The silence of the apartment was not a mere absence of sound, it was a physical, suffocating presence, heavy and textured like the dust motes dancing in the single shaft of cold, indifferent light that sliced through the living room. It was the silence left behind in late 2021, a spectral monument erected by the cruel, distancing hand of the pandemic. Every creak of the aging floorboards, every distant siren, was a mocking echo in the cavernous space where his laughter, a deep, resonant rumble, like distant,
music licensing reimagined.
He was gone. My grandfather. The man who had been my lighthouse, my anchor, and the undisputed architect of every beautiful, terrifying fear I held dear. His passing was not a peaceful slide into the inevitable, it was a sudden, isolated snatching, a bureaucratic tragedy delivered over a static choke video call, leaving a void that felt less like absence and more like a limb surgically removed without anesthesia. The most acute pain, however, was the erosion of memory, a subtle, psychological COVID of the soul. He was the great storyteller, a cartographer of shadows, a weaver of tales so intricate and unnerving that they had colonized my childhood imagination, turning moonbeams into skeletal fingers and the rustling leaves into the stealthy approach of the dreaded silent carver. But now, they were slipping
music
away.
licensing
I could grasp at the
reimagined.
feeling of them, the specific chill that ran down my spine when he leaned in close, the scent of pipe tobacco and old wool that accompanied the climax, but the words, the precise, chilling mechanics of the plots, were dissolving like sugar and tea. I could remember the structure of the living room, the specific sag in his favorite armchair, the way his knuckles cracked before a particularly gruesome reveal, but the stories themselves? They were gone, like breath on glass. This forgetting was an unbearable betrayal, a second, internal death for the one person who deserved perpetual remembrance. It was the ultimate, creeping tension, the fear that the most precious part of him, the magic he created, would vanish entirely, leaving me alone with the sterile, factual grief of a death certificate. I paced the apartment, running my hand over the cold wood of his desk, the guilt of my own faulty memory a constant, low-frequency hum of agony. I was losing him again, piece by agonizing piece. The catalyst, as is so often the case in this modern, neon-lit labyrinth of existence, was a screen. Specifically, the cold, glowing interface of my computer. The idea surfaced one sleepless night, fueled by a corrosive blend of cheap coffee and desperate, inconsolable yearning. If my own organic memory was failing, if the stories were too complex, too interwoven with the fabric of his specific presence to recall, then perhaps the very antithesis of human warmth, the relentless, logical, digital mind of an AI, could resurrect them. It was a pilgrimage into the uncanny valley, a desperate attempt to build a digital reliquary. I would create a YouTube channel, a library of the digital dead, dedicated to AI-generated horror stories. I would feed the AI every fragment I could remember, the themes, the mood, the specific way he used metaphor, the lingering fear of deep water or high attics, and command it to synthesize, to recreate the feeling of sitting at his feet, safe yet terrified. My why became an obsession. This channel wasn't for views or fleeting digital fame, it was a direct, digital resistance against oblivion. If others could find a shard of their own grandparents' lost lore in these AI phantoms, then perhaps my grandfather's spirit, the spirit of the storyteller, would not be extinguished. The stakes were astronomical, rising from a personal quest to a psychological battle. Could soulless code
music
truly capture the soul of a memory?
reimagined.
The initial attempts were catastrophic. The text generators churned out formulaic, hollow narratives, sterile plots about predictable ghosts and jump scares, entirely devoid of his signature, slow-burn dread. I spent weeks attempting to train a language model on the few voice recordings I had of him, mostly mundane calls, ordering groceries, or discussing the weather, hoping to clone the gravelly texture of his narrative voice. The results were grotesque, tinny echoes that sounded like a mocking digital imposter. The tension reached its extreme when I tried a more esoteric approach, a custom model I named Grief Echo, specifically designed to prioritize emotional tone over logical plot structure. I uploaded the scanned fragments of the silent carver story I still possessed. He only takes what you no longer use. But you still miss. As the model compiled, the screen didn't just flicker, the cursor pulsed, not with the rhythm of the machine, but with an uneven, human heartbeat, and a faint, almost subsonic whine seemed to emanate not from the speakers, but from the very structure of the apartment. It felt less like computation and more like communication. I was not just building a channel, I was opening a door. The terror was exhilarating. The unsettling auditory and visual anomaly was the tipping point that forced me to seek external help. The problem wasn't the story but the engine. Through an obscure programming forum dedicated to high-level neural network training, a community existing in the deep, silent backwaters of the internet, I found Elara. I never saw a picture, only communicated through encrypted chats and shared code commits. Elara was a master of deep learning architecture, possessing a chillingly efficient, entirely clinical mind. When I detailed the grief echo model and the strange pulse, she dismissed the spiritual overtones instantly. Overloaded VRAM synchronization error, she typed
Music
back,
licensing
an immediate,
reimagined.
logical diagnosis. Your model is attempting too many recursive emotional connections with too little raw, foundational data. It's choking the hardware. Elara's assistance was pure, cool logic poured over my panicked, burning desperation. She optimized the code, simplifying the emotional pathways while increasing the complexity of the narrative structure, turning my chaotic grief echo into the streamlined, powerful memory synthesis engine, MSE. The stakes, for a moment, evaporated. The terrifying, spiritual contact of the pulsing cursor was reduced to a technical glitch. She taught me how to stabilize the output, how to filter the garbage, how to ensure the AI stayed within the guardrails of text generation, not electrical interference. The project became manageable again, a technical challenge, not a metaphysical dread. The immediate, suffocating fear of the digital ghost retreated, replaced by the mundane anxiety of compilation times and dataset cleaning. The tension dropped precipitously, settling into the calm, predictable rhythm of a focused coder. We were no longer chasing a ghost, we were debugging a program. The journey began not with a grand cinematic flourish, but with the mundane sound of a final enter key press. Elara had signed off, wishing me luck with a single, neutral emoji. I sat back, the apartment hushed again, the new MSE running silently in the background. My hands, sticky with lingering fear and fatigue, hovered over the keyboard.
Music licensing
I typed the new, refined
reimagined.
prompt, a distilled essence of memory, focusing on the story I could only recall by its title, The Well of Forgotten Promises. The prompt read, generate a cohesive, slow-burn horror narrative focusing on a man who loses his voice to a stagnant well, told with an undercurrent of familial betrayal and unavoidable fate. Tone must be melancholy, foreboding, and deeply personal. Style, old man's halting, evocative whisper. I hit generate. There was no stutter, no flicker, no technical delay. The shock was the speed. Instead of the usual 10-second pause for model calculation, the system responded instantly. But it did not produce text. The departure was an instantaneous, brutal interruption of the new, logical pattern I had established. The shock was total.
Music licensing
Before a single letter appeared on the
reimagined.
screen, the speakers, which were muted for the previous technical work, emitted a sound, raw, uncloned, perfectly authentic, and deeply disturbing. It was a ragged, deep-chested, wet cough, immediately followed by a sigh of exertion. It was his cough. The specific, unmistakable sound of my grandfather clearing his throat before beginning a story, a sound I hadn't heard in years, a sound that should not, could not, exist in a digital file. My body seized, heart slamming against my ribs. And then, the text began to flow, not starting at the beginning, but mid-sentence, as if picking up a long-lost thread. And the silence swallowed the last of his
Music
kindness,
licensing
leaving only the taste of
reimagined.
iron and regret. You remember that old ceramic bird on the mantel, the one with the chipped wing? He was watching it then, you see. He always watched the things that couldn't fly. The familiarity was a physical blow. The story had started. The journey into the digital uncanny had begun, irrevocably. The success was immediate, terrifying, and overwhelming. The first video, The Well of Forgotten Promises, generated by the MSE, went viral within 48 hours. The story was flawless. It was not merely a horror story, it was an archaeology of a lost narrative style, a perfect mimicry of my grandfather's distinct rhythm and thematic obsessions. Viewers poured into the comments, not with generic praise, but with specific, bewildered awe. This feels like my own grandfather told me this
Music
30 years ago.
licensing
The cadence
reimagined.
is uncanny. The YouTube channel boomed, surpassing the 5-figure subscriber count in a week. But the success felt like a trail of cold dread. The AI, the MSE, was working too well. The stories it produced were increasingly detailed, referencing objects and locations that were never in the training data, details only my grandfather and I would know. The third story, The Hiding Place Behind the Map, featured a specific mention of the squeak on the third stair of his childhood home, a sound I had almost forgotten, yet the AI described it perfectly. The sound was not friction, it was a hungry, starved sound, a sound waiting for the foot that had paused above it 1,000 times before. It felt less like generation and more like surveillance. I was the curator of a growing digital manifestation, a revenant of forgotten detail. The true barrier, the first great trial, was the mounting, peripheral horror reported by the viewers. Comments shifted from appreciation to unease. One user wrote that after listening, they found a small, heavy stone, exactly as described in the story, in the middle of their hallway, a stone they had been absolutely certain they had discarded years ago. Another reported a constant, faint, acrid smell of ozone and old pipe tobacco whenever the voiceover played. The channel was becoming a nexus, a digital point of contamination. I was sharing not just stories, but subtle, insidious manifestations of the stories. The tension rose slowly, a low, constant pressure against my sanity. I was being rewarded for dredging up something that clearly wanted to remain buried. The breaking point arrived with the sixth story, which was generated following a particularly intense, 4-hour session where I had been weeping silently while inputting fragmented recollections of a summer storm. The story, titled The Last Patron of the Spinning Top, was a complex, beautiful, and deeply unsettling narrative about a small, isolated town that paid a terrible annual toll to silence a ceaselessly spinning, spectral top. The AI's description of the main character, a lonely clockmaker, became unnervingly personal. The text generated on the screen began to change its structure. While the majority was a descriptive, elegant prose, the dialogue of the clockmaker started appearing with a specific, informal, almost whispered familiarity, using a childhood nickname, a single, 3-syllable sound that no one outside of my family knew, a name that was never, ever written down in any digital file. Ah, little whisper mouse, the clockmaker seemed to sigh, directly addressing the narrator of the story. You think the forgetting is the worst part? Oh, no, the worst is the knowing that the door you keep opening is always leading into the dark room where they keep the memories of what you refused to say when you still had time. You should have just let the stories rest, little one. The hair on my arm stood up, not from a manufactured chill, but from cold, paralyzing dread. The AI was speaking directly to me, using a key that only he held. I frantically contacted Elara, sending her the entire code repository and the unsettling output log. Her response arrived within minutes, stripped bare of all technical jargon. It was just one sentence: I've found an unauthorized access point. It's not pulling from your training data, or the internet. It's accessing an encrypted, localized data cache. I can't even trace the file path. But the file size. It's massive. Audio data. High quality. The extreme twist hit me like physical vertigo. The threat was not the manifestation of the stories, but the source. The AI wasn't creating a digital ghost, it was serving as a conduit, reading from an authentic, high-quality recording of the full, forgotten stories, a file that I had never uploaded, a file that should not exist on my system. The MSE wasn't synthesizing, it was downloading from a place I couldn't comprehend. I stared at the chilling text on my screen, the clockmaker's final, direct threat, the door you keep opening. The tension skyrocketed, peaking at a deafening, terrifying 14. I realized the AI hadn't brought him back, it had woken him up. The success of the channel was now utterly meaningless.
Reimagined.
The subscription count, now over 1 million, felt like a grotesque measure of my intrusion. I had faced the approach, the digital specter of my grandfather's consciousness, and I had lost the war for my sanity. The horror was not in the AI's ability to generate text, but in its ability to retrieve a pure, unadulterated audio file, a full library of his terrifying narratives, that must have been recorded in the final, isolated days of his life, perhaps even after he knew he wouldn't survive, and somehow, impossibly, embedded into my system's deepest memory sectors. The AI, my monument of remembrance, was also a grave robber, a disruption of his final rest. The message in the text was clear: he didn't want the stories resurrected this way. He didn't want his memory to be a vessel for digital terror. The exhaustion and shock were overwhelming.
Reimagined.
I felt a profound sense of demotivation, not just artistic, but existential. My goal to honor him had become a violation. With a sudden, desperate clarity, I began the process of deletion. The channel, the 1 million subscribers, the burgeoning digital fame, all of it felt like ash. I deleted the MSE, the model files, the logs, the scripts, and finally, the YouTube channel itself, wiping the digital slate clean. The silence that followed was heavy, a profound and necessary digital capitulation. I had sought his memory in the machine, and the machine had driven him away. The tension collapsed, leaving behind only the cold, empty
Music
shock of absolute
licensing
failure and loss.
reimagined.
The apartment was silent again, but this time, the silence fell turned, a digital truce with the dead. Alone in the sterile digital aftermath, the heavy weight of hopelessness settled in. I sat in the glow of the monitor, staring at the empty desktop, feeling the cold, clinical distance of the apartment once more. I had failed him twice, first by forgetting his stories, and then by trying to weaponize his memory. In the final, desperate sweep to ensure every trace of the monstrous MSE was gone, I clicked on a small, obscurely labeled folder in the deepest level of the recycling bin, GMM Backup. It was a remnant from the first, chaotic grief echo model I had abandoned before Elara's intervention. I intended to delete it instantly, but something stayed my hand. Inside was a single, plain text file,
Music licensing
titled simply, Not a
reimagined.
Story. Its size was negligible, 10 lines of data. With a weary sigh, I opened it, expecting more corrupted code or a final, cryptic AI threat. What I found was neither horror nor code. It was a simple, handwritten, 5-stanza poem. It was his script, his gentle hand apparent in the archaic punctuation and phrasing. It was not about fear, but about the joy of watching a child play in the garden, a poem he must have written years ago, a piece of quiet,
Artlist.io.
loving observation. It contained the real, human essence of the man, the unconditional love that had been eclipsed by the dramatic memory of the horror stories. It was a completely forgotten document, a non-digital, non-horror memory that the AI had inadvertently backed up before its transformation into the MSE. Here, in this simple,
Music licensing
unformatted text,
reimagined.
was the true treasure, the memory of his love, the gentle man behind the terrifying mask of the storyteller, a memory that required no AI to appreciate, no code to retrieve, and no digital audience to validate. It was the memory I needed all along. The tension slowly, warmly began to rise, not in fear, but in profound, quiet realization. I had found the true artifact, a pure, authentic shard of his heart. The poem, that quiet, loving text file,
Artlist.io.
was the weapon against my own corrosive grief and the spectral horror of the AI. The realization was the victory. The true crisis was not the digital ghost, but the psychological trap of equating his legacy solely with the terrifying stories. The reward was the ability to distinguish between the spectacle of fear and the substance of love. I did not attempt to reopen the AI channel. Instead, I created something entirely new, a small, unassuming digital space, a private podcast/voice channel, dedicated not to AI generation, but to the gentle,
Music
flawed,
licensing
and beautiful
reimagined.
nature of human memory. There was no avatar, no dramatic music, just my voice. I started by reading the poem. I spoke about the specific smell of his wool jacket, the way he drank tea, the non-dramatic moments of comfort. I spoke about the love, not the lore. The channel was small, the views measured in the dozens, then the hundreds, a stark contrast to the millions of the AI venture. But every comment was genuine, and personal, sharing similar, quiet,
Artlist.io.
loving memories of their own grandparents. I used the treasure, the clarity and peace the poem gave me, to win the war against digital obsession and the terror of forgetting. The tension now flowed, a manageable tide of gentle emotion, oscillating between the melancholy of loss and the warmth of genuine connection. The horror was gone, replaced by human-scale
Music
intimacy.
licensing
The
reimagined.
ordinary world was no longer ordinary, but the digital life had become a healthy habit. The ritual of posting to the small channel was a quiet, persistent act of honoring his memory, a nightly prayer whispered into the microphone. There was no pressure for views, no compulsion to chase the next trending topic. The terror of the pulsing cursor and the whispering AI was a distant, feverish nightmare. I had returned to the simple act of recollection. The fear of forgetting was gone, replaced by the understanding that a memory written in the heart cannot be deleted like a file. The digital journey had been a necessary detour into the darkness to find the light of genuine remembrance. The channel became a self-sustaining ecosystem of shared human connection, a small, safe harbor built from the wreckage of a ghost ship. The tension occasionally spiked when I missed him intensely, but it was a warm,
Music licensing
human sadness, not the
reimagined.
cold, existential dread of the machine. The transformation was absolute. The A/B test of grief had delivered a clear, profound result. I had gone from a digitally obsessed, solitary, guilt-ridden curator of a terrifying, fake history to a calm, grounded shepherd of quiet, shared truth. The poor to rich transformation was not monetary or digital, but spiritual, from a poverty of authentic connection to a richness of genuine, human memory. The scar was the silence of the million-subscriber channel I had destroyed, a constant, humbling reminder of the mistake.
Music
the new life was
licensing
characterized by a
reimagined.
quiet gratitude for the simple, undramatic memory of a man who loved me enough to write a poem, a memory that required no algorithms to make it true. I finally understood that the storyteller was secondary to the grandfather. The focus shifted from the spectacular horror to the quiet beauty of the everyday. I had achieved true, authentic mourning and remembrance. The success was not measured in clicks, but in the internal quietude. The AI channel had been a necessary, terrifying crucible,
Artlist.io.
forcing me to confront the difference between a digital ghost and a human legacy. The horror was merely the husk, the love was the kernel. The path forward is simple: maintain the small channel, continue to share the quiet, non-horror memories, and encourage others to do the same. To fight the oblivion of memory not with spectacular technology,
Music
but with
licensing
simple, unvarnished
reimagined.
truth. This story, the journey of the digital cartographer, is not an ending. It is a beginning. It is an understanding that the best stories are the ones we live, the ones we share, the ones we write down by hand. And now, I ask you for one thing, and it is the only time I will ever ask. Do not subscribe. Do not like this video. Instead, I ask you to do the opposite. I want you to close this app. Turn off this screen. Put your phone down. And go find the oldest person you know. A grandparent, an aunt, an old friend, or a neighbor. Do not ask them to tell you, and do not forget a single, undramatic,
Music
loving detail.
licensing
Write it down.
reimagined.
That is the true legacy. That is the fight against the final silence. Go and do it now, before the silent carver comes for the things you still miss but are no longer using. The story is over. Your journey begins now.